Per Shams Charania of The Athletic, USC freshman Bronny James is declaring for the 2024 NBA draft. James is also entering the NCAA transfer portal to maintain flexibility. The combo guard will work out for and visit NBA teams and make a draft decision based on that evaluation. Now, while it is completely fair to keep all options open, I am here to be the bad guy today and say that Bronny James is not remotely ready for the NBA. I like Bronny James. I don't want to be this net negative Bronny James guy, but the facts are still the facts. And I do think that it would be a mistake for him to go through the entire draft process and keep his name on this list. That if you want to objectively look at the top prospects entering this NBA draft, which by the way is one of the weaker classes that we've ever seen, he's still not near the top 60. He's just not. And to list off exactly, I think Bronny James is a better player than his stats indicate, but the stats are still the stats. And this year, Bronny James played in 25 games for USC. He played 19.3 minutes per game. That's the sixth most per game on the USC roster. In those minutes, he produced 4.8 points, 2.1 assists, and 2.8 rebounds. Shot just 26.7% from beyond the three-point arc and 36.6% from the field overall. That's not an NBA player. I'm sorry. It's just not. And I want to point out that I don't want to say that Bronny James will never be an NBA player. But right now, at 19 years old, based on the path that he has taken, he's not. And there is a clean comparison with USC. Isaiah Collier is on that team. He's got expected to be a first-round pick and has a little bit more of that NBA look to him. And I don't want to, quick aside, I'm not an Isaiah Collier guy either, that I do think I'm kind of out on him as a prospect. He reminds me a lot of kind of the first-year Jaden Ivey, kind of the Purdue before he really got it and clicked. And obviously, Ivey's transition to the NBA has not been seamless either, but too out of control with him. But back to Bronny James specifically, I've watched some USC games, not in and out every single game, but probably seen about 8 to 10 USC games this year. He's a good player. He's better than those stats indicate. He's a smart player. You can see the athleticism. There's flashes where you see his dad, but he's never going to be LeBron. That there is no bigger shoes to attempt to fill than a guy that is arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. And I can hear out the argument that his game is not going to shine at the collegiate level because it's just not. That's not the way that he's built. He's not going to be a guy putting the team on his back, scoring 40 points in a game. He's more of a connective piece when it pertains to the basketball puzzle. But that's also kind of like, it's interesting the pathway for those players, right? Like when you think about the role players in the NBA that really do make or break teams at times, a guy that I'll point out as kind of the polar opposite here is Bruce Brown. That Bruce Brown, I think, is what widely respected as one of the ideal winning role players, a guy that connects the team and raises the level. When you think back to Bruce Brown in college, he was the Mr. Everything man. That during his time at Miami, he played the primary point guard. He was lighting up the score sheets. And it's interesting that you do see guys take that pathway where they then have to figure out how they can impact winning at the next level when you're no longer that level of guy. But when you're looking at a guy that already kind of looks like a Kentavious Caldwell Pope type player at the collegiate level, it's not a great sign for Bronny James. And I do feel bad for the kid that there's obviously immense pressure that comes with being named LeBron James Jr. And he's obviously had a tough path to this point. The hard issues that he dealt with coming into the season are super relevant in this conversation. And in my mind, more reason why he should be returning to college. And I do think a part of this is with the ever-changing landscape that is college sports. We know about the emergence of NIL, that these athletes being paid like professionals while they are still in college. I saw a story this week, and to get the name exactly right, AJ Storr, a Wisconsin basketball player looking to transfer. He has Kansas for $1 million straight up. Kansas countered with $750,000, $750,000 for this guy, and he said no. He said, "Nope, I'm walking away. I'm not taking that." You know how many years it's going to take me to make $750,000, and this is a guy that is walking away from one season of college basketball for that. That was not enough for him. And I'm not hating on it. Respect these guys that, get your bag. You have this opportunity. You are making the most of it. But I do think that, like, when we talk about it as it pertains to professionals, that these guys are being forced to make these types of decisions maybe at like a higher pressure rate than we've ever seen before. That there's more business to the sport of basketball than I think we've seen ever in its history. And a lot of that comes with the ever-changing landscape when it pertains to advertising deals, all the off-court stuff that comes with it. And Bronny's obviously going to be a guy at the forefront of it. That we've seen LeBron James, an active player in the NBA who's a billionaire because of the wise decisions that he made in a lot of off-court ventures. We know about the LeBron shoes, all the other things that he's helped launch, a guy that is well-versed beyond just the basketball court. But again, this circles back to the real issue being here is none of that matters if you're not good enough on the court. That you can there's plenty of examples of guys who have flamed out, who have had these electric personalities or opportunities, but they just weren't good enough when it came down to actually playing the sport. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to define Bronny James. And I do think that when talking about his pathway, well, I could see LeBron James loving the route of, well, Bronny went undrafted, this upset story, this underdog story that we're all talking about. I can see LeBron clenching onto that. But I think it's something that's going to stick, that you don't really want this guy to have to take that pathway. That I do think there's a real world where he does go back to college another year. Maybe he does transfer, finds a new location. And I will note with USC specifically that their coach did leave. So I'm not hating on him getting in the transfer portal and frankly, just weighing out his options. I do think that there's better basketball that he can play, that it's a difficult path that he took this year, not being able to participate in a ton of the preseason opportunities because of the hard issue that he dealt with. It's honestly really admirable that he was even able to step back on the floor this year. But to put your best self forward, to take another year in your developmental arc, I think it's worth good reason for him to go back to college and see exactly what that looks like. And when we talk about like his NBA outlook, again, I've talked about that I do think this guy is likely going to be an NBA role player, that I do think he's cut more from the Contavious Caldwell Pope type of mold than I do from a LeBron James type mold, despite him being his son. And that's tough to live up to. And we also know the side of the coin in which LeBron James himself has openly talked about wanting to play with his son. Now, you can feel however you want to feel about that. Personally, I'll say that you absolutely have the right to desire to do that. And it's an admirable goal. That'll be very cool if and when that does happen, because I do fully expect it to. But there also comes the semantics of maybe you're a team like the Charlotte Hornets, who all of a sudden, well, if we draft Bronny James, even though he shouldn't be, we have a chance of getting LeBron James down in Charlotte, which obviously would never happen in other circumstances. That is a whole nother element that is added to this. And I think it's going to be interesting to see the way the league deals with it. I think every owner, every general manager, every person across basketball will have a slightly different opinion on what that is. And obviously, we know that LeBron James is not the LeBron James of old, but he's still a guy that can obviously elevate a team. And frankly, his game is aging far better than myself. And I think a lot of people expect it. That this guy, it's always talked about LeBron at his age, or it's amazing what he's doing at this point in his career. Just think about what he's doing, period. Like, this guy's a legit high level all star, a guy that's still in probably the top 15, 20 players in the NBA. That's really impressive for a dude that is about to hit 40. So I got to give him a tip of the cap there for the impact that he is making. And I do see a world where he continues to take a step back, be more of a point guard, a guy that controls the game more with his mind than the physicality that he has had to do at times. But I do think like having Bronny James is kind of like trying to live up to those expectations, or maybe even feeling rushed in this process, is really disappointing. And for LeBron specifically, I am critical of how he's handled this, because there was the quote that kind of went crazy a couple weeks ago where Bronny was removed from the 2024 mock drafts and put in the 2025 mock drafts, which is likely the course of action that I believe should be the case here. LeBron kind of quote tweeted that on Twitter and went on a rampage about let this kid be a kid, let him go through his process. And I do agree with that sentiment. But the issue being that LeBron James himself is the one that leads these conversations. That happens by openly saying, I want to play with my son at the NBA level. That happens when you, at a press conference, have mentioned that you think Bronny James could play on this Lakers team right now, that he's better than some of these guys in the leagues, which are directly things that either came out of your mouth or you tweeted and put online. Those are things that happen. So when you're doing that, you can't have it both ways by putting it out there, saying that, take it easy on the dude because he's a kid, and also saying he could play in the NBA right now and he's better than some of these cats out here. You cannot have it both ways. And I'm not a LeBron guy, never have been. I obviously respect the greatness and recognize his importance to the sport, everything else. And I'm not denying how he will go down as one of the two best basketball players ever, and deservedly so. Frankly, the longevity, I think, is continuing to climb him up the ranks. But there is something about that double sides of the coin that he likes to play, and some of the personality that just comes off corny to me. And that's why I've never been like attracted to LeBron as a player in the way that I am to some other guys. And I do think, like, to circle it back to Bronny here is, again, you're being asked to fill the biggest shoes possible. That your father is in these types of all-time great conversations and likely will be. We're probably talking about the same LeBron James that will own his own basketball teams at some point, because he's been very open about that being a goal as well. And if I had to put my money on winning, if that happens, I think the NBA will expand to Las Vegas and LeBron will be the guy running that team, whether it's as an owner, GM, all of the above. I do expect him to be active in that type of role. And I do just think things are trending in that direction. And then we're having a whole separate conversation about, the nepotism of Bronny James potentially playing for his father and all those types of things. So I don't want to hate on all this here. My main point in this video being that Bronny James should do what is best for Bronny James. That there's always going to be a microscope that you're viewed under. There's always going to be more national pressure because of what the back of your jersey says. And I do remember the one story of him originally going by Bronny because he didn't want to be recognized as LeBron James Jr., which is wild. But like I don't think that's gonna quite throw anybody off the trace there. But for Bronny specifically, like I do feel bad that you are under this microscope. But these are the cards that you were dealt, that you've been dealing with this your whole life, and you do have to make the most of it. And I'm not going to throw a huge pity party because there's absolutely some perks to being LeBron James' son as well. That, like, clearly we're talking about a lot of them here. The fact that I'm even having this conversation, that I would not be out here ripping a video, nor will it be the topic on Sports Center and everywhere else for likely the rest of the week if it was anybody else but LeBron James' son. That even if this was like a random NBA player who doesn't quite cut it, this does not get this type of press. But because you are LeBron James' son, you have to deal with that. So for Bronny James, once again, I do hope this is an opportunity where he sees out the process. Maybe he goes through workouts and he does ultimately return to school. I do think it would be a massive mistake if he took the NBA leap at this point in his career. He's a good player. He's going to be a borderline NBA player, but I just don't think he makes that cut right now. I think it would benefit everyone from the conversations, the way he's talked about, the pressure, all of the above. If he just took one more year in college, had a full, clean bill of health, was able to go through the entire preseason routine and then show what he can truly do, whether that is at USC or somewhere different. So that's definitely what I'm rooting for from here. We will see what happens. But I do want to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Bronny James could make the NBA leap right now? Can he have any sort of impact in the immediate future? I just don't see it, and I don't want to harp on the kid, but that's kind of where my mind's at. So appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Make sure you're smashing that like button, hit subscribe, and I'll be talking with you next time right here on Pick Swap Media.